Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, your mostly weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. You know, I keep saying about every third week I need a W word for just depressing, like really depressing stuff, and I haven't found one yet. I need to put some time in with my dictionary and do that. Because we had some of all of that yesterday, and anyway, I am Robert Winfrey. Thank you all very much for listening, those of you that do. Thank you for all of your likes, comments, subscribes, sharing us around with any of your friends, family, relatives, enemies. I don't care who you share us with. Just share us with somebody. We're trying to grow this thing. I mean, in all honesty, I'd be happy with a stagnant number that was decent, but we don't quite have that yet, so growth is the only alternative to death in this case. On the agenda today, we have yesterday, UFC 248, and what a... I almost hate to judge the entire event based on how the main event went, because if you take the main event out, it was a pretty darn good night of fights. It really was. But the main event was what it was, so we'll have to talk about that. Also, this coming week, the UFC is in Brasilia, Brazil, the capital of that great country, for UFC on ESPN plus 28. And, you know, that's a surprisingly solid card. I'm not jumping up and down, but you got some good fights on that card. So we'll be talking about that and news. The UFC's done a fair bit of either matches that they've actually signed and announced or stuff that they've signed and indicated a date that they want it to go on. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And any other news that happens to break between now and when we're done recording. So, see how that goes. All right, back with me after a couple of weeks off. 411 Mania's Jack of all trades. Jeffrey Harris is in the building. How are you doing, Jeff?
I am doing okay, but I'm doing infinitely better than Yoel Romero, even though it's technically all his fault, and I'm really angry at him. I blame the coronavirus, because that's what everyone's doing these days.
That is why we won't get Tony and Khabib.
Well, I'm going to blame you and Clucky on that if that happens.
I blame Clucky for bad decisions. Clucky has no say over fights that fall through.
Huh?
And when that fight falls apart again, it will not be my fault. Unless I actually hit one of them with my car. In which case you can blame me.
Self-defeating prophecy.
That is really only relevant if I have divine...
I would like to think they would move the fight before canceling because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, for those of you unaware, that is the joke going around the MMA circles at the moment, that this time when Tony Khabib falls apart, it will be because the whole event will just be canceled due to health concerns over the coronavirus.
I mean, the event went off last night without a hitch, so... Nevada
also doesn't have any... I don't think the coronavirus has a presence in the state of Nevada right now. But that could change rapidly.
That could change rapidly. Isn't it a state of emergency in New York?
I know California. I'm not sure on New York. I think Florida recently announced that they were... I don't know if state of emergency or not, but Florida's making some moves.
Is this thing getting blown out of proportion?
I wouldn't say blown completely out of proportion. It is getting exaggerated, I think.
Yes, people have died, but from what I understand, there's been a comparative amount of people dying from just regular flu.
Yeah, and there's still a little bit of there's some of the stuff with the coronavirus that is not really established or known right now. There's some disparity amongst what the mortality rate's going to be depending on which doctors you're talking to.
Yes.
Some are estimating 2 to 3%, which would be significant. Some are estimating less than 1%. Some of the numbers are based on, well, only the most severe cases actually get diagnosed, and the more severe cases in people that are more at risk are more likely to result in mortality, so that's why you're getting some of the elevated numbers. So there's a lot of somewhat unknowns, but Jeff, you and I have both been around the planet long enough to remember swine flu, avian flu, the Zika virus, SARS. If you live in my part of the world, the West Nile virus was a thing. These are all things you need to be aware of. I'm not saying these are nothing. These are things you should be aware of. Take reasonable precautions. But it's to the best of my knowledge right now, this is not going to be a global society-destroying pandemic.
Well, I think it's good. I think it's good to be cautious and better safe than sorry. But I wonder if some of the reactions have been a bit too reactionary. So I just hope CinemaCon doesn't get canceled this month.
Didn't they cancel Emerald City Comic-Con over the last week?
They canceled South by Southwest. I know that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's getting canceled, and look, maybe that is the right thing to do.
Yes,
you do want to
cancel, postponed. Yeah.
Okay. So, point being, it wouldn't shock me if come April, there's some outbreak in the area and they wind up having to cancel, postpone, relocate, whatever, because of a public health issue. And it would just be par for the course with that fight at this point. I just want that fight. I've wanted that fight for 3 years.
I've wanted that fight for 5 years.
Yeah, sorry, it is 5. Well, the first couple of times they made it, I liked it and I wanted to see it, but when it fell apart, it wasn't the end of the world. The last 3 or 4 times, the last 3 years, it's like, this isn't just a good fight. This is the best fight you can make, and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen, and it's driving me up the freaking wall.
Well, you wanted this fight last night too, and I
didn't want it. I said I knew how they got there.
I feel like you wanted this fight, and you're a big fan of Romero.
I appreciate Yoel Romero. I wouldn't say I'm a fan.
You shouldn't appreciate him anymore.
Look, it was a dud. There's not a fighter in the world that doesn't have dud fights on their resume. It sucks when it happens to...
Ferguson doesn't have duds.
Tony Ferguson has had duds on his resume.
Such as?
The Johnson fight's a total dud.
It was not as bad as last night.
Look, and when we get to duds, there are degrees of duds, okay? They're not all equal. But
that fight was... I'm sorry, that fight was not a dud. It was, as I recall, that was a decent fight by Michael Johnson.
Yeah, he won. It was just a rather uninteresting fight.
I mean, it wasn't. I wouldn't call it a great fight, but I thought I was able to watch a fight without wanting to gouge my eyes out.
Sure. Look, when I say it was a dud, I mean it was essentially a non-issue. It happened.
Okay. That's not.
Look, hang on. And look, when you get further down on the scale of duds, you get to stuff that I'd rather have food poisoning than watch this fight again.
Okay.
And this fight was definitely more towards that side of things. But there isn't a fighter that doesn't have duds on their resume, especially if you go back far enough. And that's just the reality of fighting for long periods of time. You're going to wind up having an off night. Your opponent's going to have an off night. Your styles aren't quite going to match up. You're going to be hurt in some way. They're going to be hurt in some way. Who knows? And it just really, really sucks when it's a high-profile fight that happens to be the dud. So.
Yoel Romero claimed Israel Adesanya acted like a ghost. He said his descendants from Africa. This is his words, not mine, by the way. Yoel Romero said his descendants from Africa are great runners, and he didn't take that into account. He said this through his interpreter. He begged his interpreter to say this. It looked like his interpreter did not want to say this at the press conference.
Okay, I don't blame his interpreter for not wanting to say that.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you're the interpreter, that is your job. Okay, yeah, look. You heard me kind of laugh at that because, all right, look, it's not something that you should probably say publicly or privately, and it speaks to some unfair stereotypes. But look, my sense of humor is what my sense of humor is. I'm only going to apologize for that so much. Anyway, as far as the main event goes,
he's Cuban, but is he Black Cuban?
I couldn't tell you about the specifics of his ethnic or racial makeup.
Because there are African Cubans, correct?
Yeah, sort of, not really.
Okay.
Cuba's been fairly.
Hang on. Person of color. I think it was not the right thing to say last night.
Well, I mean, look, you know what? Last week we had Henry Cejudo out there calling Aljamain Sterling Al Jemima.
Right.
MMA fighters are not the most racially sensitive people, and can we all stop pretending that only white people are racist? There's actually a long history of racial animosity between, I think Mexicans specifically, but certain Hispanics and African Americans. Like, that's a thing.
I mean, he was just standing in front. I mean, if Yoel Romero's upset, like, why was he just standing in front of Israel Adesanya doing hand katas? I don't know what those are. Doing his stupid little hand katas. I mean, do fighters know that cutting off the cage, closing the distance, you're allowed to do that? It exists. And if he's angry at Adesanya, why not try to cut him off? Close the distance. I mean, like, why do fighters say, like, oh, that guy's just running away from me? Well, okay, the guy he's a counter striker who wants to pick his spots and is not going to aggressively play rock'em sock'em. Like, okay, so why do you not have a strategy to deal with that? Like, why is the onus on your opponent to engage with you and give you all your openings that you're looking for?
You ask a very relevant question, and sadly, more people.
And no one asked, and you know what? The press was clearly upset with him last night, and you could tell there was ire being directed at him, but not one person asked him, like, why not try to close the distance? Why not try to cut him off? Not one. Not even Kevin Iole.
That's not really surprising. As for the fight itself, Israel Adesanya retains the middleweight title via unanimous decision. 248-47s, 149-47. Officially, I was 48-47 for Adesanya. Just a really odd fight. There was a lot of nothing happening for huge portions of it. I think these two combined, like the first round, if memory serves,
7 total strikes.
Yeah, the first round was like Romero landed 4, Adesanya landed 3. Chuck Mindenhall, I think, did some math on the totality of this fight. At that pace, those two would have only needed another 140 some odd rounds to equal the output that our co-main event had over 5.
The most aggression they showed was after the fight was over.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed with Adesanya too, because he campaigned for this fight. He asked for this fight. He pushed for this fight. Even when it was clear that Costa was going to be hurt and not able to fight him, like, this was a fight he was pushing for.
Well, we would have. The truly sad thing is we would have wound up here anyway.
Even if
you made it Cannonier. Even if you made it Cannonier versus Adesanya. Cannonier got hurt 2 weeks ago.
Why couldn't we have just waited several months and just booked? Why did we need a title fight last night?
Okay.
You're saying it's...
Hang on, no.
Okay.
That's a fair question. So We're going to have to make a couple of assumptions based on the UFC's established protocols. And if you disagree with those, fair enough, but we have to operate within them for the purposes of this exercise. Okay?
Okay.
So we're not going to upend the UFC's machinery for the sake of this argument. All right. You want a title fight main eventing a pay-per-view. Always. So there's at least going to be one. You are not really in a position to try and put Zhang and Joanna as a viable main event for the purposes of selling a big pay-per-view.
Why?
They're not draws yet. I'll caveat yet on that.
Quantitatively prove that had they put that fight at the headliner, it would not have drawn.
Yes.
How?
Let's look at Joanna's history of drawing on pay-per-view.
Okay.
Joanna has never been
she's never had her own. I don't think she's ever headlined her own pay-per-view.
No, and that's in no small part because she was never able to really become a draw. Look at the ratings she did when she was fighting on free TV.
Why not at least experiment and try for this time? I don't think it's gonna. Is it really gonna tank UFC ESPN Plus business had they tried to put Zhang Joanna as the main event here?
Is it going to tank in the sense that they're suddenly going to collapse? No, but you're also not going to be putting your potential stars in a better position. Here's the reality. Hang on. Here's the reality. Here's the reality.
It's defeatist. It's self-defeatist.
Hang on. Here's the reality. Joanna was champion for how many years? Never became a star. Whatever reason. This is just reality. She never really got to that next level. If you're trying to sell a major pay-per-view, you have to appeal to the widest possible audience, right? The widest possible audience.
You say she's not a star, but she's not a star compared to what?
Compared to Israel Adesanya. Since he was the other half, since he's the one we went with instead, Adesanya has provably done more business and drawn more interest and money than Joanna.
Okay, but I feel the problem here is that Joanna's never been given the opportunity to headline a pay-per-view on her own, and that's my problem here. Like, you can't. I don't really feel like you can say it without ever really giving her the chance.
If you think that they should have taken that chance with her earlier in her title run, I don't disagree with you.
I don't.
But at the moment,
I don't think. I think had you just made this the main event and maybe put a couple other interesting fights on here, I think you would have been fine.
You would have been fine for the people that bought it, but you would have had about a third as many people buy it.
The UFC has had much worse in recent years, I think.
Yeah, you're looking at it from the perspective of fan enjoyment, not from the perspective of revenue generated. You have to sell the event.
I think you could have. I think you could have sold. I think you could have sold this event.
You could not sell. You could not sell Zhang and Joanna as a. Hang on.
Okay.
You could not sell it to the same wide audience that you can with Romero and Adesanya. More people, I guarantee you this. More people watched Joanna and Zhang in the co-main event than would have watched them in the main event with Adesanya and Romero as the main event of that pay-per-view.
Like, there was one, god-awful pay-per-view that was Evans versus Dan Henderson, Rashad Evans. Like, they let that fight go forward without a title fight.
How many years ago was that?
It was 2013.
So 7 years ago.
Okay, that fight drew 140,000 pay-per-view buys.
And Demetrius Johnson as champion did less than 100,000 on at least 2 occasions. Heck, Amanda Nunes did less than 100,000.
All right. So if they're willing to do that, I don't see why they could not have just let Zhang and Joanna have the main event here. Because
they wanted to make money.
It would have made money.
It would not have made nearly the same money that this made. That's the unfortunate reality of the situation.
I'm thinking long term.
Okay, long term, you exposed Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk to an audience at least twice as big, if not more, than they would have drawn on their own in the main event. Long term, this was the most people that have ever watched a Weili Zhang fight. Okay. Right now after that fight. Ever. But now I know how crappy the numbers were for her title win.
You've tanked Israel Adesanya now.
He's not tanked. He took a hit. That's not tanked.
You let Israel Adesanya have the Israel Adesanya equivalent of Anderson Silva having a meltdown in Abu Dhabi with Damian Maia. This was the 2020 equivalent of that performance.
Yeah, it was a dud. I'm not defending that. It was a terrible fight.
This was quite comparatively, I think, even worse than that fight.
You can make that argument.
And you want to know what it's worth? People did not have high expectations for Maia Silva. You know, this was the fan-friendly fight that people wanted to see because Romero sometimes has a reputation for going bonzo gonzo and doing crazy stuff in the octagon. Because quite frankly, he's an idiot. And he has one of the worst fight IQs on the planet. And quite frankly, he's one of the most overhyped, overrated middleweight contenders of all time since Hector Lombard.
That's demonstrably not true.
I stand by that.
Yoel Romero knocked out Chris Weidman, knocked out Luke Rockhold.
He's now 1-4.
Should have beat Robert Whittaker in their second fight.
Where he fit, a fight that where he should have been fighting for the title, where he didn't even make weight.
No, he didn't make weight. That's on him.
Missed weight for two UFC title fights. Two in a row. Have one of the worst UFC title performances ever here, and is now 1-4 in his last 5. He is not. He is beyond overhyped, overrated. He is, and I never want to see him in a title fight ever again.
I can't control what you want to watch.
I'm on the edge of never wanting to see him fight ever again after last night.
That's entirely up to your personal prerogative.
You're being, I'm not saying you can't take a round off in a title fight. He takes every round off.
He takes about half of every round off.
You can't be in a title fight where you're 42 years old and you've been
allegedly
given a shot at the title, and he just stands in front of Adesanya and just stares at him. I mean, like, what? Why does Adesanya have to engage with you? Like, if you're angry with him, cut off the cage. Do they not train fighters how to do this? You're allowed to cut off the cage. I mean, you can close the distance. There are fighters who are very good at that. I mean, I don't understand it. It was awful. That fight was despicable. It was disgusting. It was pathetic. I hated that fight. Ugh.
If you want the rest of the answer as to why this fight was booked on this card, assuming you're not going to go with Zhang and Joanna for financial reasons in your main event.
Okay.
Who's the other title you would put in ahead of that? What's the other available championship fight right now?
I'd have to look.
They're all booked, is the answer. There is not another title fight.
I would have given Zhang and Joanna the chance to headline this card.
So you would have sacrificed 3 times your revenue stream for no reason. That's a terrible decision.
I think. You want to know what, Robert? I think booking Adesanya Romero was a terrible decision. It never should have happened, ever.
So who would you have had? So
The
what would your
matchmakers agreed. They did not want to book that fight.
No. Dana's full of shit.
You're saying that's not true.
I'm saying Dana White is full of shit.
Okay, so you're saying, all right. Well,
tell you what. No. Tell you what. Let's hop into the alternate reality where that fight's awesome. What do you think happens if someone asks him about booking that fight on a 2-fight losing? What do you think happens? The fact that the fight sucked, he goes, no, we shouldn't have made it. Ask him the same goddamn question right now about Henry Cejudo and Jose Aldo, and you know what line of shit you're going to get from him? Then don't buy the fight. He's a miserable, disgusting slime ball of a person. And look, so I do not give a rat's ass what that man has to say.
All right. I don't agree. This fight never should have been booked. It never should have happened.
I'm asking you for an alternative, and your response is I'm going to throw away money.
I don't really feel. I don't get that. I don't get that viewpoint because you're putting on
Adesanya and Romero as a headliner draws more money.
Okay.
What's complicated about this?
What's complicated is you're actually putting on an awful fight in the main event.
Okay. Hold on. A, that is not knowable beforehand.
Okay.
B, by the time the fight happens, you've sold it, you've made the money, it doesn't matter as much.
To me, going forward with the ridiculous plan and the fight being a dud is to me that's not better than the alternative. I'm sorry.
So so just for the record, your stance is I will throw away millions of dollars to appeal to a smaller audience. That's your plan.
I think in the long run it would have benefited everybody.
How?
I think it for one thing. I think it builds strawweight.
Smaller audience.
It builds strawweight.
It does not build strawweight to have them fail numerically on a pay-per-view. It builds strawweight to have the best fight of the year take place in front of the most eyeballs. That's what we got.
Their job is to promote these fighters.
Their job is to make money.
Okay. I just find it hard to believe. To me, it's defeatist to say you can't promote and build that fight up to a level to make people interested and want to see it. Because to me, that's like saying Ortiz or Couture can never draw money like on their own.
They haven't drawn money on their own.
Their fight back in the day.
No. On their own. You know how badly received that Ortiz versus Del Rio fight was? They don't draw independent of the UFC, first of all. Second of all, we're not talking about first of all, the entire business model has changed since Ortiz and Couture were fighting. That really should be the first thing. Secondly, you're trying to constantly appeal to the widest possible audience. The widest possible audience didn't even watch Wei Li Zhang win the title. They don't know who she is.
To me, the proof is not there that they could not have drawn decent numbers for that women's fight.
I'm not saying it would have been, it probably would have been sub 100,000 buys. But the point is not what's our minimum. The point is what's the maximum. They're trying to make the most amount of money.
Okay.
Romero and Adesanya draws the most amount of money. It's not that complicated.
I'm even less interested in Adesanya versus Costa now, which Dana was doing the hard sell for last night.
Okay, and people are going to be slightly less interested in it. That's the reality of having a dud fight. Look, again, give me a viable alternative.
I've never seen Joanna in a dud fight.
The Torres fight was a dud. Her fight with Tisha Torres was kind of a dud. And
you and I have different definitions of what a dud fight is.
Tell me anything about the Torres fight other than Joanna won. One thing.
She was. She
One
fought.
thing. Okay, there was a fight. She won. What else? Anything strategic? Any moments from the fight? Any knockdowns? Any cuts? Anything?
She looked good.
No, she didn't. She won. That's about it.
It was a dominant win.
It was not a dominant win.
She won 30-27.
She won all 3 rounds. It was not a dominant win.
Okay.
I know
was
because
still better. I was able to. I could stomach that fight more than what happened last night.
Sure, because nothing mattered in that fight.
I mean, it got her a shot at the title.
Sure.
Fought for the title in her neck.
Wait, was that? Are you? No, she didn't.
She fought Valentina.
That fight with Torres had very little bearing on her moving up to flyweight and challenging.
Well, she had to come back, and she was coming off back-to-back title losses.
She could have lost that fight and still been promoted to flyweight and fought for the belt.
I mean, I don't think she should have, but whatever. This is an meritocracy. I just feel you're trying too hard to justify Adesanya Romero because you wanted to see it, and you're a Romero fan, and Romero disappointed you last night.
Look, Romero didn't disappoint me. The fight sucked. That's just kind of the long and the short of it.
Okay.
I know how we got here. I know why we got here, and I think pretending otherwise is fantasy.
I feel like I feel like this fight. You can't book a 1-3 guy who can't even make weight for his title fights in another title fight just because he looks like a genetic marvel when he's apparently 42,
probably older,
and he talks like. And his voice is like indescribable. He talks like, "Hey, it's your Adesanya! You fought like a ghost last night." It should not have happened. It never should have happened.
Give me a financially viable alternative. That's all I'm asking you to do.
I gave it to you.
No, you did not give me a financial alternative. You said I would throw away money to do Zhang and Joanna in the main event.
Yeah, fine. Then I'm throwing away money to do Zhang versus Joanna.
And you're now fired from your job in the UFC.
Okay.
I'm saying there's a middleweight. The middleweight title is the one that's available for the schedule.
And then they have one of the best women's fights of all time.
That no one sees.
People would have seen it.
It's only look. There's a very real argument to be made that a fight is only as good or as useful as the number of people that see it. More people saw that fight because they were the co-main event under that main event.
All right, I think your attitude is just self-defeating. It's
based in reality.
To me, it's sort of like. To me, you're like those kind of executives who are like, we can't cast an Asian woman in a lead role because they can't draw.
No. Hold on. How did you get to that?
I feel like they're like the idea. Scarlett Johansson is cast in the lead role in Ghost in the Shell because has demonstrated she can draw money in like high concept blockbusters on her own.
I'm not sure that's accurate, actually.
She had that one kind of action movie that did well before Ghost in the Shell came out.
Which one?
By Luc Besson. What was it called? Molly?
I vaguely recall the movie you're referencing.
Lucy in 2014, Lucy.
Didn't Lucy lose money?
No. It made $463 million.
Okay.
Cost $40 million.
That thing must have done gangbusters overseas because I know it didn't do all that well here.
It did. The thing is, it did do well here.
Really? My
Yeah.
memory is faulty about that. Okay.
But here's my point. Like, they're like, okay, well, we have to we cast her in the lead in Ghost in the Shell in the role of a character who is traditionally Asian and Japanese, because we know she's a viable box office star at that point.
Okay, so slightly better question then. If that movie couldn't draw with Scarlett Johansson, what do you think it would have drawn with someone else?
I don't know. I don't know. But I would not. But I mean, I feel like you can't make. I feel like you can't make like a decision like that because I feel like it's wrong half the time. So the movie made that movie made 126 million. So that because of the strength of that, that's why she's cast in Ghost in the Shell. But people were upset that she was cast in the role that is an Asian character, because of the idea that Scarlett Johansson is a viable box office star and we can make money with Ghost in the Shell with her in the lead. And Ghost in the Shell did not really make money.
No, it didn't.
So that's kind of my point here.
So your argument is I'm going to gamble, I'm going to potentially lose money on the off chance that for some reason Zhang and Joanna managed to break outside the hardcore fan base bubble.
Well, I mean, I'm like, you still gamble. In the end, you're gambling no matter what, Robert. But with Ghost in the Shell,
there's some gambling.
Here's my point. My point is the Ghost in the Shell was supposed to be a safe gamble, but it still failed.
That was only supposed to be a safe gamble because the people trying to sell it didn't understand what they had.
Okay. But they're like, okay, we have a legit box office star in Scarlett Johansson. She's the reason the movie's getting made. And that's the safe gamble, and yet it still fails. So I feel like I don't feel like it would have bottomed out that division or hurt those women if it would have drawn less money. I think it could have helped in the long run. That's my opinion. But
you're also okay. So you're only looking at it from the perspective of you think Zhang and Joanna benefit from the prestige of being in the main event.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm telling you, if you're the UFC, where your goal is to make money, Adesanya and Romero makes you 3 times as much money.
I feel like we've seen worse main events and worse outcomes than that. Like far worse.
Again, it's not about the outcome. It's about what you can sell.
Okay.
First of all, if you're going to have that as your main event, your ticket price goes down. Just has to go down. You're not going to make as much money at the gate. You're not going to sell as many pay-per-views. You're going to make less money on your investment.
Okay.
The UFC has to make money. Adesanya and Romero makes more money than Joanna and Zhang.
I would need to see the numbers to prove it. That they wouldn't have made money on it.
Again, Zhang's last fight was seen by no one in the United States. Because it took place at 5 a.m. from China.
Okay.
Zhang's fight after this, now benefiting from having not only a truly spectacular fight, but being on an event that was seen by the maximum amount of people that were ever going to watch that card, is going to be a much bigger deal.
Joanna has been a co-main event on some pretty big cards.
Yeah, and you're still lucky if the casual fan base remembers her as someone that was on the co-main of a Rousey fight.
All right, so not every card has been built on what the casual fan base.
Yeah, they are. They really are. That's what they try to do.
Max Holloway has headlined many pay-per-views that probably have not done very well, and they still let him have.
That's true. And Frankie Edgar bottomed out a division from a financial standpoint.
Okay.
They don't like.
Are you saying Max Holloway should never be allowed to headline a pay-per-view again, basically?
I'm saying you got to think about it. If you put him in the co-main event with a better main event, they will.
I mean, that makes no sense to me. It makes no sense at all.
Okay. Well, let's
we have this. That we can have these opportunities be given to Holloway, but not a fighter like Joanna or Zhang. It makes no sense at all. It's ridiculous.
Well, there's also, I hate to say it this way, but if we're talking about the reality of the marketplace, men draw more than women.
Okay. Other than Ronda.
I'm speaking very generally there.
Okay.
Generally speaking, a male fight at the top of a card draws more than a female fight.
All right, you're saying a big men's fight will outdraw a big women's fight. All right.
I'm saying a moderately anticipated men's fight will outdraw a big women's fight.
I'm saying at some point you have to take the training wheels off and at some point bite the bullet, as UFC has done before.
I agree with you there, and I think if we're talking about Zhang, it should be her next fight. If you're coming off of this great a fight on this kind of platform, you got to do it next for her.
I can fathom a difference of opinion there, but to me, it's if you're never gonna let them at least try it. To me, it's just a self-defeating attitude, and they're never gonna get. If you never try it, and they never get the opportunity, then they're never gonna be ready, and they're never gonna draw. That's my point. You have to. Sometimes you have to bite. Sometimes you have to take a bigger gamble and take the risk, as UFC has done many times in the past. And I feel they've taken far worse gambles than Zhang versus Joanna.
Zhang versus Joanna would have been a much bigger gamble than other times.
Okay, sure.
Zhang's next
night, maybe last night it would have been, but I would have been fine. I would have been fine with that over the reality of what we did of booking the stupid fan-friendly fight with guys who should not even have been sniffing a title shot. Didn't earn a title shot. It was comedy. And the fight last night, it was ridiculous.
Look, if we're talking about how it played out in reality, yeah, it was not a good fight. And the real thing I want everyone to remember that's pissed about this, remember what not only Dana White is saying right now, remember your perspectives on this. And then if Cejudo and Aldo turns out to be a barn burner, don't be shocked when we get more bookings based around that than based around this outcome.
I mean, I'm not even committed to saying Adesanya won because there was such little activity.
Yeah, look, these two, I think their combined landed strikes were like the 17th lowest in UFC title fight history.
They looked. My problem with last night's main event, it didn't look like they were committing to any exchanges.
No, neither of them wanted a prolonged exchange for different reasons, both of which are valid, frankly.
They looked like they were moving underwater in slow motion. It didn't look like they were fighting each other. People complained about Dan Miragliotta, what he was doing and inserting. Now, to me, there needs to be a better clarification of timidity and what timidity is. And I think we've seen many fights where fighters are timid and not looking to engage. But if you're not going to enforce that, I mean, what are you complaining about? Are you going to tell me there was no timidity in that fight?
I think by the time Miragliotta tried to warn them, it was not warranted. I think if he had gone to both of them after the first round and said, "You guys have to actually fight," I think in the first round, the discussion about timidity was warranted.
I think after I would have issued a warning after the first round and said, if you guys don't engage, I'm going to take away points.
Yeah, again, I think the first round was warranted as a warning. I think after that, both men were... I don't think timidity was warranted after the first round. It was just a bad fight.
Maybe after the... I mean, because, yes, in the later rounds, Adesanya was doing work on the legs. That was clear. Adesanya would do a kick to the leg, do a kick to the body. And the leg kicks clearly did some damage, but I mean, Romero would get a punch in there now and again. But I mean, it was just so uneventful. It was hard to really just grasp onto it. And I don't know, it's hard for me to even give that fifth round to Adesanya, honestly.
I gave the fifth to
Romero. Initially, I thought the second round could have been 10-9 Romero or even a 10-10 because barely anything happened in the second round either.
Yeah, it was a extremely low activity fight.
I mean,
you throw two unknown elements together. If we're talking chemistry, which is kind of what's going on here.
Okay.
You take two elements that you've seen before, you know how they interact with different properties, you throw them together, sometimes you get a reaction, sometimes you don't.
What were the hand katas about?
Oh, that kind of depends on who you ask. There's a thing that kind of goes around on occasion about a style of block, like the 52 blocks you use with your hands.
Okay.
That I think Romero's kind of joked about.
All right. Well,
some of it's hand feinting.
Close the distance and try to beat your opponent.
Some of it's feinting to get a reaction. There's a lot of reasons that guys do stuff like that.
Look like an idiot.
Yeah, a lot of fighting looks really stupid when it doesn't work.
But I mean, I'm just like not sure what Adesanya is thinking because Adesanya, he can't. This was the fight he was asking for. He was actively campaigning for this fight. He didn't look good either.
No, I think Adesanya at least takes a couple of things away from this that are potentially good for him going forward. One, he won, which is kind of the biggest one. Two, he's the only guy in the last several years to have fought Yoel Romero and win, lose, or draw come out unscathed. I mean, Yoel Romero completely altered the career of Robert Whittaker's course over their two fights. Completely destroyed him physically. Paulo Costa was rendered a bloody mess.
That was Romero or the injuries?
The injuries that Romero caused?
He had. I mean, did he cause him to get stabbed in his stomach?
No. Look, Whittaker had plenty of other issues to go along with that, but
Whittaker had plenty of issues that had nothing to do with Romero. I'm sorry.
And then he had the physical reality of spending 10 rounds getting bludgeoned by that guy.
He wasn't bludgeoned for all 10 rounds. I'm sorry.
No, he wasn't bludgeoned for all 10 rounds.
He soundly dominated their first fight.
He did not dominate it. He won.
Yes, he did. No. And Romero was taking rounds off.
Look,
like an idiot.
Hold on. Whittaker won the first fight clearly. It doesn't mean he dominated.
Yeah, I think he did.
He won 3 rounds of he won 3 of the 5 rounds. He won the fight. Not arguing that. He also got his knee destroyed.
Okay.
And had to sit out for, a year and a half while he recovering from surgery. Come back, fight Romero again.
Romero's your buddy.
He's not my buddy, but I think if we're going to talk about this, let's talk about reality. Fighting Yoel Romero is the type of thing that if you're not careful, drastically alters the course of your career. Adesanya was careful.
Why are you angry at Paulo Costa? He was never booked for this fight. I'm
angry at Paulo Costa for existing.
Is it like this thing with Uriah Faber?
No. In the case of Costa, look, some of this is not specifically him. I have really had more than enough of the fighter sitting cage side and then going backstage to talk with the backstage reporter about what just happened. I am beyond over it.
Why?
It's a pointless exercise in promotion. I don't like it. I don't want to deal with it.
Doing, right?
Well, I get that's what they're doing. I understand it. I don't like it.
I don't disagree with anything he said last night.
I don't care what he says. I'm not saying he's wrong or right.
He's the number one contender. He's going to be fighting one of these guys. Yet, I think it kind of matters.
Look, I don't.
Okay.
The only thing I care about fighters is when they actually get in the cage. Until then, they don't matter.
Now, look, if Costa fight, if his next fight is a dud or he lays an egg in the octagon like that, then I'm like, yeah, let him have it. But I feel like he was kind of in the right with everything he was saying last night.
I don't care. I don't care that
But you're angry at him saying he's cycling off steroids.
He is.
Like
that's why he's not fighting.
He is, but that's never really been something that's mattered to you that you're getting angry about on Facebook or social media before, and like calling people juice heads or juice monkeys. Why is that setting you off?
I think my real objection. First of all, yeah, that should have been him in there, but between injuries and his presumptive steroid use, which I think everyone agrees is what's going on there.
Okay. Injuries are not his fault. He was never...
No. You always bear culpability for your injuries unless you're hit by a car. Okay. How much culpability is down to the individual situation?
It should have been him, but he was never booked for this fight, so it's not like he pulled out of this fight. Wait.
I can't remember. What injuries is he dealing with right now? Like, why wasn't this him?
Cleared. According to Dana White, he's not cleared.
That's all we have. He's not medically cleared. We don't have an injury.
Exactly, it was.
I mean, I don't know either. That's why
biceps. He had some sort of biceps injury.
Okay.
Costa had surgery, torn biceps. He had torn biceps, plural, apparently.
Well, your biceps are always plural. There's two of them.
Right. So he had surgery to repair them. I don't know. So apparently he had torn biceps.
Okay.
Now, but my point is he was never booked to fight Adesanya. So it's not like he was booked to fight him and pulled out. So I'm like...
I mean, look, if you want to be just kind of generalized angry at the entire situation, yeah, I'm angry at Romero for fighting the way he fought. I'm angry at Adesanya for fighting the way he fought. I'm angry at the UFC for booking the fight, even though I know how and why they did it. I'm angry at Costa for not being able to stay healthier off the juice. I'm angry at Cannonier for signing to fight Whitaker instead of arguing for a title fight. I'm angry at Cannonier for getting so he couldn't even be in the discussion for replacing for this fight.
Okay.
I'm angry at the UFC machine and the schedule that they keep for massively just churning out content the way that they're contractually obligated to and burning out fan bases and fighters the way they do.
Okay. I'm not angry at Paulo Costa. I feel the anger at Paulo Costa is misplaced, is what I would say in that whole thing.
Okay. You're allowed to have your opinion about what I'm saying.
I don't think he did anything wrong.
Well, wait.
Fighters get hurt. Fighters get hurt and injured all the time.
Yeah. And how many years did you yell about Cain Velasquez doing that to himself?
It's because he was overtraining.
Now we've got Costa with his third major injury during his time in the UFC. You're gonna tell me he's not doing that to himself?
I mean,
please tell me he's not doing that to himself.
Cain Velasquez has pulled out of a lot of fights and was champion and was out for 2 years without defending his title. We're not there with Paulo Costa, so I don't feel it's about...
Not to the same degree, but I'm noticing a disturbing trend in Costa. Let me put it like that.
Okay. Look, if Costa were to become champion,
And he might. He's a very good fighter.
if he becomes champion and we're in a Cain Velasquez situation, I will say so. But he was not even he did not pull out of a fight here.
No, his bad training habits led to him not even being available in the first place.
Okay. I don't feel that's all his fault though.
Fair enough.
He was on the injured list and wasn't even in the running for this fight.
I know.
So,
and my point is, he got injured in the first place.
Here's my point. You're acting like he got injured on purpose, so be available to fight Adesanya.
He might have, chosen to take a surgery option to help cycle off of his roids.
He's never failed. I mean,
he's had USADA issues.
You have less ire for guys who have failed drug tests for steroids. So, Romero has failed a drug test. Which was
he has.
A tainted supplement, but he still failed more drug tests than Paulo Costa.
Yeah, and Costa's only been busted for illegal intravenous use.
Okay.
And look, the entire exercise in USADA is one I think that they shouldn't be engaging in. But if they're going to engage in it, I'm going to call it along those lines.
Okay. All right. I think we can move on from the main event now.
Your co-main event.
Raw nerves. We're all just sort of in a testing. We're all grumpy about it. Yes.
I maintain you have never actually had to podcast me when I'm grumpy.
Okay. You sound grumpy now, Robert.
Trust me, when I get grumpy, I am surly, short-tempered, and very terse.
Yeah.
You want to preview? You want to know what if I'm genuinely grumpy about the main event, what I would have said about it?
Yeah.
Fight sucked. Fire both of them. Let's move on.
Okay.
Here's my terse example of. Hang on. Here's my grumpy terse summation of the next fight. Great fight, one of the best of the year. Give Zhang a main event next time.
Okay.
I disagree with the decision. Let's move on. You have 50 words or less. That's my grumpy podcast.
You scored the fight for Ioana. Why don't you get into that? You scored every round for Ioana.
I did. What? I suck at scoring. Move on.
Okay, so how did you arrive at every round for Ioana?
What part of I suck at scoring did you miss?
I mean,
I suck. Move on.
Do you still think she won every round?
I haven't rewatched the fight.
Okay.
I think going back over it in my head.
The way I was looking at it live, I think I gave rounds 3 and 4 to Ioana. 5, I felt like Zhang I felt like she got into second gear. It felt like she kind of stepped up the activity and was doing a lot more. Now, of course, you can say that Ioana had more kicks, more strikes to the body, more to the legs, more leg strikes. But I felt like it looked like Zhang was just being more active and was landing more in the 5th round. That's just my opinion.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
Look, again, for the record, that's what I'm like when I'm grumpy. If you want the actual reason for why I scored it the way I did, scoring while live blogging is a fundamentally flawed and imperfect process. I've always acknowledged that. I had no sound because I was recording live alternative audio commentary at the same time. So I'm now doing 3 to 4 different things at once. Yeah, I'm going to screw it up constantly.
All right. Was people are raving about this fight. Do you think it was just sloppy rock'em sock'em robots?
No. This was not sloppy Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Both women had to make very calculated adjustments to their strategy. There was Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but this was not sloppy at all. Both women are very precise, especially once they kind of get a feel for each other. Joanna had to make a really interesting adjustment. She went southpaw for rounds like 3, 4, and 5. Zhang was able to find her punches, and then she started losing them throughout some of the middle rounds. By the time we got to rounds 4 and 5, she kind of had a feel for timing Joanna's leg kicks with her counter right. This was a great fight. This was an absolutely insane back and forth fight. Yeah, doing it live, I went all 5 rounds for Joanna. Going over the fight in my head such as I can, I think the first round is the one I was probably the most incorrect about. But again, I have no sound when I'm doing that. So Zhang probably at a minimum should have taken the first. I'll freely cop to that one. I do kind of stand by thinking Joanna won the fight. But
some of those rounds were close. Like, I can see how you could arrive at Joanna winning.
Yeah, and again, I do stand by that portion. I do stand by thinking Joanna won. I'm less certain about, all 5 rounds or which rounds go which way. That will require a rewatch when I can just watch the fight without doing anything else. A lot of people are getting way too hung up on the cosmetic damage to Joanna. And, I mean, to be fair, that hematoma
was caused by the headbutt.
Less the headbutt, more the fact that Zhang kept punching her in the forehead.
Okay.
There were a lot of punches even before that kind of accidental clash of heads.
The accidental headbutt that probably raised the hematoma originally.
I'd have to double check because I think the hematoma was already in place by the time they clashed heads in the 4th.
Was it?
I think so.
It wasn't until after the headbutt that I noticed it.
I think it was after the 3rd that I noticed it between rounds 2 and 3, and then at the end of the 3rd, I think was the first time I noticed, like, whoa, she's got a second forehead going on there.
That was disgusting, but man,
this was the worst.
Joanna is one of the toughest women on the planet, and no one can argue that.
Those two beat the ever-loving hell out of each other. I mean, the guts that both of them showed.
Cardio. That's world-class cardio on display.
Yeah, they slowed down a little by the time we got to the 5th, and Zhang, I think after
Zhang, that's where she picked it up, was the 5th. It looked like she was slowing down midway. I feel like she picked it back up in the 5th round.
Yeah, she slowed pretty badly actually in rounds 3 and 4, like visibly slowed.
Right,
and then found her second win.
So that's why I had it 3-2, and I gave rounds 3 and 4 to Joanna, basically.
I don't think that's I think based on the scoring criteria, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
My problem is that the first 2 rounds, it's like she barely edged out the first 2 rounds, basically, and that's kind of the problem with 10-point must system, and that it's kind of like the flaw.
There's a lot of flaws in that and how it pertains to scoring MMA events.
All right.
And I wish I had a good solution. I really do, but I don't.
I don't know. I just feel sometimes I just feel like you almost shouldn't win a marginal round. Is my feeling. But whatever.
Okay, hang on. Slightly different question then. I think the most coherent argument I've heard against the 10-point must system is that a more representative scoring system for MMA is to score the fight as a whole rather than round by round. I'm not sure I agree with it, but I think it's at least a somewhat coherent position to take. If you scored the fight as a whole instead of round by round, who do you have winning under those conditions?
Still have edged it to Zhang.
Okay. Again, this was a great fight. This is right now the fight of the year for 2020, I think. Now, whether that holds up by the time we get to the end of the year remains to be seen. But at a minimum, this is the bar that
Great fight.
other fights are going to have to clear. Genuinely great fight.
John looked like a star last night. I hope she can become a big draw now and a big star. I don't know. I mean,
One can hope. I mean, again, it's
at least
unfortunate.
overseas probably. I mean,
Well, she's already a fairly big deal in China. And if I put on my tinfoil hat, there's no way the UFC was going to let her lose on anything less than a finish because they've invested so much time and energy into China.
Okay.
But I'm not really putting on the tinfoil hat at the moment. I'm saying that argument is there. If
you were saying that last night, so
I
feel
did.
like
I specifically said if I put on my tinfoil hat, that's where I arrive.
Okay. I mean,
again, I have no issue. I disagree with the decision, but I think
you want, when all's said and done, will go down as one of the all-time greats, though.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate.
I don't know if I see her becoming. I probably don't think she's going to become champion again, but what a career!
In some respects, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate that this is basically going to end her title aspirations in the UFC.
Possibly, very possible. But
unless they do an immediate rematch, I don't see her getting back to the title.
Think about it, she came out of nowhere. Unseated Carla Esparza, who we thought was probably going to be a more dominant champion, and had a pretty incredible run, all things considered.
She had a very lengthy run. That's very true, and had some good fights along the way.
Yeah, I mean her run. I mean, arguably her run is a Hall of Fame run right there.
Given the standards for the UFC Hall of Fame, such as they are, yeah, she probably gets in.
Yeah, I mean, given the current standards.
If we're talking about, if you ask me to put together a Hall of Fame,
okay,
I don't know if I'd put her in just yet. I don't know. We'll see.
Not yet, but at some point in the future,
depending on how the next, couple of years of her career go, assuming she has a couple of years left in her career. That woman has taken a lot of damage, not just this fight, but I did this in the preview show. She's fought a lot of 5-round fights, and I don't mean 5-round fights and just scheduled. I mean she's gone 5 rounds a lot. There's a lot of miles there.
Let's see. This one won her last three. Then as champion, she had 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row as champion. Then the loss to Rose, that's 5. The loss to Valentina, that's 6. Then her next 2 were also all 5 rounds. So 8 total in the UFC.
Yeah, that's a lot of rounds of fighting.
She had a whole kickboxing career before that.
Yep.
A lengthy kickboxing career. So,
she's a little shop-worn at this point. I mean, she looked great last night, but that bill comes due for everybody.
it could be affecting her. It's just not as obvious. But she's had a great career. To me, you can't tell me she hasn't earned a spot in the Hall of Fame later on the merits of her title reign. No,
she probably will get in, and I have no issues with that.
Okay.
Let's see. Moving on.
I'm definitely a fan of Weili Zhang right now. This raised her stock even more in my eyes.
Well, again, I'm like one of 5 people that watched her win the belt.
Right.
Yeah, she's on a 21 fight winning streak. Overall, her only loss was her debut. Next up,
her title fight, her experience even in the UFC was fairly limited.
Extremely.
That was her fourth UFC fight.
Yeah, and I defy, it's one of those things. I defy you to tell me anything about any of her previous fights. A lot of them were just unbelievably lackluster.
She submitted Jessica Aguilar.
Yeah. I know. Like
in the
that
first
was
round.
yeah, that was her. That was like that was her first real like performance in the UFC. But the Torres fight and the Taylor fight,
Right.
those were again they were very lackluster.
And Aguilar is not like didn't turn out to be like a
She
huge star, but she's had quite a career. She's
yeah
done
she,
some
she just got into the UFC like 3 years too late, and then
prop. Yeah,
had a bunch of injuries that further kind of derailed that. Because
she
for a
had
while
a
she was the best. She was the best strawweight in the world for a period of time.
correct, and she had a pretty good career outside of the UFC. What by the time she got to the UFC, she kind of had already peaked. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can move on now.
Oh, last thing. Probably next for Zhang is if they don't do an immediate rematch here, which they might, as a matter of practicality. The next contender is probably going to be, if it's not Joanna, is the winner of the upcoming rematch between Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas.
Yeah.
And I would be very curious to see Namajunas match up with Zhang. I don't think Jessica Andrade can fight any way other than how she fought their first time. She might be able to rein it in a little bit, but on the whole, I think that fight's always probably going to play out in somewhat similar fashion. Namajunas with, her footwork, her ability to move in and out, long limbs, good power. If there's a knock on Joanna, it's that she doesn't pack a tremendous amount of power in her punches. That is not the case for, Rose has pop in her blows. so there's that.
So we haven't seen Rose since she lost the title to Andrade.
Nope. She again took a bit of a sabbatical, and they signed that rematch. It's coming up on. If I can remember the event. They're 240. Yeah, they're on 249. So they're on. They're the co-main event.
A year.
They're the co-main event for Tony and Khabib right now.
Good.
At least as the bout order is currently listed.
Until coronavirus intervenes.
Of course, until the event's canceled, but that is what's currently scheduled.
Right.
So, again, I agree with you. Zhang came off really, really well. And I do hope she, gets a rise in her profile. She's a good fighter.
She'll at least be popular in China.
She was popular in China before this. Her her title winning effort made her popular in China.
She'll be even more popular.
Yeah, again, the issue is getting her popular with a portion of the fan base that pays to watch events.
I don't see her ever becoming a big star in the U.S.
It might be a tough road to go. It's certainly not going to happen overnight for her. Again, she might, but I think the most realistic thing she can hope for is not just to be a star in China, but kind of that entire, China, Oceania region. Like if that, those like few time zones can really kind of get behind her, that'll be a big deal.
I think she'll do well there.
And then you just have to deal with the reality of, very few pay-per-views ever taking place in that part of the world. All right, next up, Beneil Dariush defeated Drakkar Klose via knockout 1 minute of the second round. Dariush controlled the entire first round basically by having Klose's back. Couldn't get a finish. Klose popped him a couple of times in the second, rocked him. Dariush rallies, charges forward, lands a left hand from the depths of Hades, and Klose. That was such a picture perfect. Not the punch. The punch was kind of ugly, but it worked. But Klose falling back with his mouthpiece half out of his mouth, bouncing off the cage, dropping sideways to the canvas. Wonderful visual for Dariush.
First time Klose has ever been finished, and he was coming into the fight on a 3-fight winning streak. I'm sorry.
Give me Dariush and Cowboy. Just.
I wouldn't. Dariush he's due for a big fight because of this, I think.
Yeah, this is a 4-fight winning streak for him, I believe.
Yeah.
He should be back in the top 15. Yeah, give that man that man's been a workhorse for that
Give
division.
him a big fight. Give him a prolific fight. He's earned it. Let's see.
Yeah, give it. I think Cerrone. What was the other suggestion I saw?
Fajea, maybe Fajea or Barboza, someone like that.
Barboza. I don't know if you saw this. He asked for his release.
I
I don't.
see.
I don't know if
that.
it's just negotiate. He already fought Barboza anyway and lost.
I'm, how long ago was that?
A couple of years. Not too long. Not ages ago, but not recently.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Barboza knocked him out with that flying knee. It was 17.
3 years ago. They fought 3 years ago. Yeah. I could still see that rematch happening.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what's up with Barboza, but apparently he's asking to be released from his contract.
I mean,
I don't know if he's just negotiating in public or not, but
he could be. Well, look, you're Barboza. You've hit a ceiling in the UFC. You know.
Yeah, he might be looking to maximize his value elsewhere.
I mean, I don't dislike Barboza, but I mean, is he not basically a high level? He's a perennial top 10, top 5 gatekeeper, basically.
At the moment.
That's basically what he's been most of his UFC career.
Yeah, he had a couple of moments when he had like runs towards the top, and then he ran up against somebody who just was able to beat him.
Knocked him back down.
So again, if he does want to go somewhere else, I don't think anyone should be, mandated to fight in the UFC if they don't want to.
Diego Ferreira, who I think he's been surging right now too, right? He's having a pretty impressive run.
Yeah, Ferreira's on a good run. Who's the other one that I got a serious kick out of his post-fight interview, though, when he says, "I'm going to call somebody out." And Robert Whittaker, I really just want to be as good a father as you are.
Yeah, that was not. That was classy of him, I think.
I mean, it's your post-fight interview. Do what you want with it, but I'm going to call somebody out, the former middleweight champion, 2 divisions up, and just to say something nice about him. There's so much, crap that goes on in this sport that on the occasion that somebody does something like that, you know what? Go for it. Okay.
Dariush. Spreading some positivity, spreading some love.
Okay, Gregor Gillespie, maybe. He's ranked 12 right now for Dariush.
Does Gillespie have a fight lined up?
I don't think so. I think I might be mistaken there. I don't think
Gillespie had a loss to Kevin Lee.
Yeah.
But he is ranked above Dariush. I mean, you could do that fight, for sure.
Again, I still kind of like him and Cowboy because both those guys are going to throw down.
Yeah.
It's a great. I mean, that's a really. I hate to say that Cerrone at this point is just king of the fight night main events, but that's kind of where he is. Throw those two as your main event for a fight night. No one's really going to complain.
But but good on Dariush too, because he was kind of in a bit of a slump for a little while. Broke it, and now he's having impressive performances again. Yeah. Arguably, he could be in the top 10 again, I think.
He should be in the top 15, I think. I think 10's a bit of a stretch right now.
Okay, but, I mean, he's
fought his way back into the rankings, or should.
Yeah.
I mean, the rankings haven't been updated yet, but
I feel like he's very underrated, though.
The man is just a workhorse for that division. Because
this was his 12th overall, 4th in a row. He's lost 4 times in the UFC, but he's fighting his losses weren't to the best in the world, but when you're fighting at lightweight, you're gonna have losses like that. I feel like
unless you're Khabib, yeah.
Yeah, unless you're Khabib or Tony Ferguson, because lightweight is very competitive. Lightweight,
even Tony had his one.
Yeah, but that's realistic because almost everyone is good in this division, Robert, and I think you would have to agree. Not just good, but athletic, tough, and skilled. Different levels of skills, but like capable.
It's the deepest division in the sport.
And so I feel like if you were to take like 1 through 50, like you'd have upsets in this division more than other divisions in MMA.
Yeah, the difference between, like, if you took the top 50, I'll be facetious here, women's flyweights. There's the skill gap between the top 3 or 4 and everyone else is pretty significant. The skill gap at lightweight between the top 3 to 4 and everyone else, while it's there, because I mean the top 3 at lightweight are Khabib, Tony, and like Gagey. Like those three.
I feel like,
those 3 definitely are the top. But if you were to take, say, numbers 4 through 20, the difference between number 4 and number 20 is not that high. So it's a really, really deep competitive division.
Did Dariush basically throw caution into the wind in that second round?
Yeah, he got tagged and kind of went, all right, let's do this, and was able to land and finish close. So, good on him.
Was visual. But I've been a fan of his for a long time, and I'm happy to see him doing fairly well again. So I hope he does get a big fight next.
Yeah. Next up, Neil Magny returned from his drug-related suspension and defeated Li Jingliang via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. This was a fight that happened. Jingliang was never able to manage distance properly. Magny either hit him from the outside or got all the way inside and was just kind of better wherever he wanted to take the fight. I think the only place Jingliang would have had an advantage was if he was straight up on top or in the pocket, not in the clinch. And he was never able to get to those positions. Magny just beat him up everywhere. And it was a fight. Nothing special. Yeah, you got anything on that one?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we've come to expect for Magny for most of his career. He's a decent fighter, but he's just not capable of breaking through the upper tier and winning those important fights that would make him a contender.
Yeah, that's pretty much accurate. Kicking off the main card, Alex Oliveira defeated Max Griffin via split decision, 29-28. I scored it for Oliveira. Fun little, blood and guts kind of gritty fight. Nothing terribly memorable, but once Griffin got that cut, he checked out a little bit for the second round. For the record, round 1 to Griffin, 2 to Oliveira, 3's the swing round, and I lean towards Oliveira. Good fight. Not really a whole lot to complain about there. So, Jeff, the dirtiest fighter in the UFC, Alex Oliveira. What'd you get from this?
I didn't really care for it. I thought it was kind of dull.
Again, not great. I think it benefits a little bit in hindsight by then having Magny and Jingliang do a Neil Magny fight after it.
This is kind of the ceiling for Oliveira to me. He's never going to be an important fighter. He's going to win fights like this, but not beat the bigger name opponents.
I agree with that. All right, that was your main card. As for the prelims, Sean O'Malley returned from his myriad of USADA issues and defeated Jose Alberto Quinones via TKO 2 minutes, 2 seconds of the first round. Just blew him out of the water. O'Malley got a lot of praise and hype from his first couple of UFC fights. I didn't see it. I was very down on him. I'm not saying I'm glad he was off for 2 years for essentially bogus reasons, because I'm not. But he clearly worked on his skill set during that time, and now I kind of see it. He was very fleet of foot, very mobile, good footwork, good shot selection. I'm not saying champion, but the people who are saying this guy's got a world of potential, I can see it now, if nothing else. Mark Madsen defeated Austin Hubbard via unanimous decision, 29-28. First 2 rounds to Madsen, third one to Hubbard. Madsen Olympic silver medalist in Greco-Roman wrestling. The man can go. But he really needs to refine his skill set. He seems to be relying a little bit on some techniques that will work on guys who are not UFC caliber fighters. And he's going to have to deal with that, because the better you are, the less likely you are to succumb to a standing guillotine or a Japanese necktie. So hopefully he works on that. But he's a good prospect, and Hubbard's no slouch. You know, he came back in the third and did what he needed to do as far as putting his foot on the gas and giving himself a chance. Adolfo Vieira defeated Saperbek Safarov via arm triangle choke, 2:58 of the first. Lucky finish for Vieira, and when I say lucky, I don't mean that he fluked into it. But he took a front kick to the face, and his left eye, the cut was under his eyebrow, kind of on the lid for his left eye, and his left eyelid swole and just dropped over. That eye was shut. If they get between rounds in this fight, or if they stand back up and the ref sees that, the doctors call in that fight for good reason. So he got the takedown, and Adolfo Vieira is one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners of the last 10 years. He is a phenomenal grappler. And this was a picture-perfect arm triangle choke. Watch this. Look at all the details he does and all the nuances that he's able to get right. It's a thing of beauty. Gerald Meerschaert defeated Deron Winn via rear naked choke, 2:13 of the third round. I don't think Deron Winn can make welterweight. I know he's really short for middleweight, but the man is... I don't think he has the mass to lose enough to get another 15 pounds down. So he's going to have to figure out a way to reliably deal with guys who are this much bigger than him. He took some body shots that he didn't like. Meerschaert timed a nice left, staggered him, followed it up, got him down, choked him out. Good win for Meerschaert. Winn had a bit of hype when he came into his UFC debut. He won that. He's lost his next two. He needs some work still. And in fairness to Deron Winn, he's like 7-2 now overall. So less than 10 professional fights. Everyone at that level still needs a lot of work. Then on ESPN Plus, we had Giga Chikadze defeating Jamal Emmers via split decision, 29-28. First round to Chikadze, second to Emmers, and then the third, kind of a swing round. I went first two to Chikadze, third to Emmers. And then the second round is the swing round. I had to just remember that. Close fight, 29-28 for either man is perfectly acceptable. And kicking everything off, Dana Batgari defeated Guido Canetti via beautiful knockout punch, 3 minutes and 1 second into the first round. Good for Batgari. He is now, I believe that's the first Mongolian victory in UFC history. I'd have to double check that, but I think that's correct. Because I think he was the first Mongolian they signed. And then I think he's the first to win as well. So, again, maybe don't quote me on that, but I think it's correct. And that was the rest of your card. So, Jeff, we had some stuff on the prelim. Some good, some meh. What do you want to talk about?
Meerschaert submitted Darren Winn. Looks like he could have maybe knocked him out, but he went for the submission instead. At least he got it. That's it.
Alrighty. Again, that was UFC 248. To the extent that anyone was watching along with my commentary, I thank you. If you've read after the fact, I thank you. Not to pull the curtain back too far, but I occasionally get depressed about how little traffic my stuff seems to generate. So to the extent that people do read and choose to interact with it, I do sincerely thank you guys, because I occasionally get really sick of banging my head into this brick wall and not getting anything really out of it. So thank you. I just always appreciate you guys, and I want to make sure that's known. Alrighty, moving on. next week, this coming Saturday, because we're still in the midst of the UFC deciding, hey, we can do 8 events in a row, and yeah, and 6 of them are going to suck. This one, not so much. The UFC will be in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and we have a good main event. Kevin Lee will fight Charles Oliveira. And, Kevin Lee had a bit of a rough patch. Rebounded with a good win over Gregor Gillespie last year, that beautiful head kick. Seems to have found himself again now that he's training with, he's at TriStar, right? Yeah, he's with Firas Zahabi, at least most of the time. And on the other side, we have Oliveira, who's on a long winning streak. That said, if there's been a knock on Oliveira, it tends to be that against the rank and file, he'll win. He'll probably even finish them. But when you take that step up, that's where he stumbles. And he's on a 6-fight winning streak. He's finished all of them. But those have been over Clay Guida, Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, David Tamer, Nick Lentz, and Jared Gordon. Now, none of those guys are scrubs. None of them are, next level guys. And it breaks my heart to say that about Jim Miller, but it's true. Kevin Lee is absolutely a next level guy. So this is going to be an interesting one. Oliveira, the superior pure jiu-jitsu stylist. Lee, the better wrestler. Lee good about taking back. Lee is really good about dishing out damage, more so than anything else. Lee also has a freakishly long reach. He's got like 76 inches, I think. 77. And when you're 5'9", which he is, and he has a reach about as long as mine, and I'm 6'1", he might have a longer reach than I do, actually, now that I think about it. Again, this is a really good fight. I'm leaning towards Kevin Lee, especially over 5 rounds. I think Oliveira doesn't really deal with taking damage all that well. And Kevin Lee is going to put some damage on him, so that's kind of where I've landed. Again, good fight. Jeff, what do you think? The Motown Phenom we have Detroit against Du Bronx. Again, I like this fight. What are your thoughts?
I'm leaning towards Kevin Lee. I like Oliveira, but he's had a good run lately. But a lot like with Edson Barboza, I'm not sure if he's capable of breaking through the upper echelon. Let's see. This is like the biggest fight Oliveira has had in a minute, correct? Like the highest level.
In a while, yeah. I think you could maybe argue the Felder fight was kind of close, but Felder was still kind of on the rebound. This is probably his highest profile fight since, I don't know, either Edgar or Holloway, but Holloway wasn't champion at that point, was still just kind of coming up. Maybe the Pettis fight?
Was Felder in the top 10 when they fought?
I don't think so, but I can't remember off the top of my head. If he was, this is the highest ranked opponent he's ever fought. I think that's very clear. Again, apart from maybe Edgar in 13 at featherweight. But apart from that,
it may be Holloway too.
Yeah, apart from those two, this is certainly the highest level opposition he has faced at lightweight.
So he has won his last 6. Oliveira's had a very strange career,
I do. I think I've seen all of his UFC fights. I think I've covered all but maybe the first.
He's been in the UFC for almost 10 years. And he's had these weird spurts. Had a thing at featherweight that didn't really go very well. Now he's back at lightweight. He's been performing well. I still just like what Kevin Lee brings to the table here that I don't think Oliveira is going to be able to get past.
All right, next up, we have I'm really excited about this fight, actually, which probably means it'll suck because I can't have nice things. Damian Maia will fight Gilbert Burns. These are two of the more decorated, not only jiu-jitsu practitioners, but jiu-jitsu for MMA practitioners that we've had square off in a while. Maia on a 3-fight winning streak. Okay, he got lucky that the Rocco Martin fight wasn't a draw. I thought it, for the record, I think that fight's a draw. But he choked out Ben Askren in his most recent fight. I mean, the 3-fight losing streak he went on was against Tyron Woodley for the welterweight title, which, like, that's one of the worst title fights you'll ever see. Like that, the second Woodley Wonderboy fight, yesterday's, like that is the like unholy trinity of bad title fights. To be fair, there's at least 2 Anderson Silva fights that should be in that discussion as well. Then he lost to Covington and Usman, so the current, I think, number is like 1 and 2 in the division. And Burns has been he's been bouncing a little bit between welterweight and lightweight. He's on a 4-fight winning streak. He is 6-1 in his last 7. That one loss came to, just Dan Hooker. His last couple of fights at welterweight, beat Alexei Kunchenko, beat Gunnar Nelson. Again, this is a really good fight. If they hit the mat, I'd be very curious to see how this goes. I think it kind of behooves Burns to keep this on the feet because Burns, again, phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner. I mean, like world champion. Like we're talking cream of the crop. He has very real and documented power in his strikes. I think he might want to keep this standing and try to bomb on Maia a little bit. But I really like this fight. I fully anticipate being disappointed because if there's things that I like, I can't have them, like I said. But I lean towards Burns a little bit here. That said, should be a good fight. All right, Jeff?
I'm leaning toward Burns. You talk about miles on a fighter.
Boy, do you.
Maia is 42. See, he's not quite at 40 fights yet, but he's getting close. I think this will be his 30. This is going to be his 38th professional fight. Thing is, if you're able to defend the grappling with Maia, you're in a pretty good place. And I think Burns is a fairly decent striker too. I wouldn't say he's an elite level, but he has striking. He has stand-up. And I think that's probably going to be a problem for Maia as well.
I think we're just going to do quick hits for the rest of this because we don't have a full bout order yet. So
right, but it's not a bad-looking card, though.
It's things. Really not. We have
there's a lot of talent on this card.
Yeah. There's a lightweight fight between Renato Moicano and Damir Hadzovic. Moicano moving up on a 2-fight skid, so was finished by both Aldo and the Korean Zombie, so he's trying his hand at lightweight instead of featherweight. And he'll be, again, Damir Hadzovic, who's just a tough out, man. He's a tough guy to get out of there. Dangerous, kind of a rangy guy. I lean towards Moicano kind of here, but not a sure thing. A light heavyweight fight between 2 guys that we all kind of hoped would pan out, and both are still looking like maybe they won't. Johnny Walker, who was finished by Corey Anderson in his last fight, will fight the Ukrainian minor Nikita Krylov, who is 1-2 in his last 3. Coming off that loss to Glover Teixeira. I'm going to lean towards Krylov there. I think he can kind of absorb some of the craziness of Walker early and then punish him for it later. But, we get to see which of those 2 light heavyweight guys becomes somewhat relevant and which just exists. Francisco Trinaldo is back and still plugging away at lightweight. He'll fight John McDessie. Again, good fight. I actually lean towards Trinaldo there, but age and wear are catching up with that man. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos will fight Alexei Kunchenko. Good fight on paper, actually. Kunchenko coming off of his first ever loss to Gilbert Burns. And a fight that he actually turned it on late in that fight, if memory serves. I mean, he still lost. He lost the first 2 rounds. But when he knew he had to go for it, he at least put forth some effort. I kind of like Kunchenko there. I mean, Dos Santos was on a long winning streak and then got finished by Li Jingliang in the 3rd round of his last fight. So looking forward to that one. Both guys can win. Both guys good strikers. Expect some craziness. There's a flyweight fight that I'm sure will not take place on the main card because the UFC. Jussier Formiga, who most recently lost to Joseph Benavidez, but does hold a win over Deiveson Figueiredo. So, and considering the UFC is looking at booking an immediate rematch between Figueiredo and Benavidez, I don't know why. You guys don't want that division, just let it go.
You picked Benavidez to win that fight.
Yeah, so did you. How wrong we were.
I did.
Anyway,
devastating that was for me.
Formiga will be fighting Brandon Moreno, who just defeated Kai Kara France, which is not an easy thing to do. Good little fight there. I lean Formiga, but Moreno has very real ways to win that fight. At bantamweight, Ronnie Yaya still kicking around. Was last seen a little over a year ago in February of 19, losing to Ricky Simone. Now he's fighting Enrique Barzola. That's an interesting one. Barzola's primarily a wrestler, and Yaya, of course, is primarily a jiu-jitsu stylist. Barzola coming off of a loss as well, his to Movsar Evloev. I kind of lean towards Yaya there, but I wouldn't be shocked if Barzola pulls it off. Women's flyweight Marina Moraes will fight Mara Bueno Silva. I think she's fought in the UFC before, actually, but I must double-check that. If not her, someone who has a very similar name. She is 6-0. And yeah, she beat Jillian Robertson in her UFC debut. Okay, I was correct. She has fought in the UFC before. Probably going to lean towards Silva there, but I'm not sure. There's another flyweight fight. Holy crap. I can't remember the last card that had 2 men's flyweights fights on it. Using up half the division right now. Gustavo da Silva will fight David Dvorkin. I'm going to butcher that guy's name. Wow. He is from the Czech Republic. That is the Czech Republic. I remember my flags. I'm going to go with Dvorak until I hear otherwise, and apologize for butchering that guy's name. Both gentlemen are making their UFC debuts. Double check Silva on that. No, Silva got submitted by Khalid Taha in his UFC debut. I don't remember that fight. I know it happened, but I don't remember anything about it. So he will fight Dvorak. Probably going to lean... screw it. I'll pick the debuting guy. Watching a Brazilian lose to an Eastern European in Brazil just amuses me for some reason. Veronica Macedo will fight Bia Malecki. Malecki, I think, is... Yeah, like she won her UFC debut, but that was like her professional debut. Whereas Macedo, Colombian, Venezuelan, there's the crest in the middle of the flag. I'm confusing her with, there is a Colombian female fighter in that same division that I'm confusing her with. Macedo, coming off of her first win in the UFC, She lost 3 fights in a row, then was able to beat Poliana Viana. I'm going to go with Macedo there, actually. And Randa Marcos against Amanda Ribas. Again, that fight will not be the first fight of the night. That's going to take place earlier, but the full bout order hasn't really been updated yet. Ribas is 2-0 in the UFC with wins over Emily Whitmire and Mackenzie Dern. Whereas Marcos is on the... she won her last fight, so if you go by her record, she's going to lose this one. And at this point, I'm just picking Randa Marcos to continue the pattern and Ribas taking the win. No other reason other than Randa Marcos has never won 2 fights in a row in the UFC. That's essentially my logic there. All right, Jeff, like you said, that's not a bad little fight night card. So what stands out to you? What are you looking forward to?
Trinaldo, Jussier Formiga, Marina Moraes. Let's see. Hanayaya, Enrico Barzola. I hope Formiga versus Moreno is good. I think it's at least a decent fight on paper. Johnny Walker, kind of hoping to see if he can get back on track after getting knocked out by Corey Anderson. It was embarrassing for him.
Get stopped. Imagine getting stopped by Corey Anderson in 2020.
I wonder if I want to see it, is that the end of the Johnny Walker almost legend, or can he revive the hype train? Because Corey Anderson pretty much derailed his hype train flat. So we'll see.
All right. And again, next Saturday, that will take place in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. So stop by, say hello. Always appreciated when you guys are able to do that. All right, let's move on to some of the news that I have for this. A lot of fight announcements coming out very recently. So let's start with this. The UFC announced that Amanda Nunes will be defending her women's featherweight title at UFC 250 against Felicia Spencer.
So they gave it to Spencer, huh?
Yeah, Spencer is a safer matchup than Anderson. Anderson, while I think she would also lose, has a bit of a puncher's chance. Spencer, not so much.
Lost to Cyborg at UFC 240. Lost to Megan Anderson in the UFC.
No, she beat Anderson.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Lost to Cyborg at 240. Mm-hmm. Coming off a win over Zara Ferran dos Santos. I mean, it's weird that they suddenly have women's featherweights now, but I mean, you have the division, you have the champion, might as well give Amanda a fight. I don't see her beating Amanda, but you never know.
Someone will eventually if Amanda doesn't retire soon. So
I wonder if Amanda very well could retire with both titles. I wonder how likely that is.
At the moment, I'd say quite likely. I don't see anyone in either division really giving her having a really good shot at beating her.
If that does happen, she is the greatest of all time.
She's already the best female fighter of all time.
Best, yes. But that would what a way to cement your legend, you know?
Well, if she wins here, and again, I am picking her to do so, that will be one more bit of history for her. She will be the first simultaneous champion to defend both titles while holding both titles. So, another little thing for her to potentially add to her legacy. That will be your co-main event for UFC 250. The main event, of course, is Jose Aldo and Henry Cejudo, because we can't have nice things. Actually, sorry, that's a facetious comment. Here's the real reason Aldo is getting that title shot. Because the UFC wanted a Brazilian star to main event the pay-per-view that's taking place in Brazil. It's 250, which is a big number. So you're going to have a double title fight. Bantamweight is one of the only titles that's not currently occupied. And the only Brazilian star in that division, even though he just lost, is Jose Aldo. I've said before that fight should be going to either Aljamain Sterling or Peter Yan. Or Corey Sandhagen. Or a rematch with Marlon Moraes. Or someone who actually has a win in the freaking division. But, again, I'm not going to pretend I don't understand their twisted logic about how we got here. I sincerely hope Jose Aldo wins. I really do. I hope it's a terrible fight. He wins a decision. Henry Cejudo goes away, and then somebody else beats Aldo.
I hope he doesn't.
What, you're rooting for Henry Cejudo?
Yeah, I am.
Why?
I got nothing against Henry Cejudo, other than
every video he's released over the last 2.5 years.
Other than campaigning for this fight and declaring he was going to save the flyweight division and didn't really save it.
You have not seen any of his little videos, have you?
I don't really follow the guy on Twitter. What did he do?
No. Like, you know he calls himself the king of cringe, right?
Yeah, I'm aware.
Have you ever seen any of the videos that kind of lean into that?
Like, where would I go to see these videos?
He posts them, I don't know, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay.
They're just really, really stupid.
I mean, I don't necessarily hate stupid internet videos. It would depend on the level of stupidity, basically.
I tend to think of them as a little bit like the Colby Covington videos, you know?
Okay.
They're kind of that same level.
With the porn stars?
Yep. Where he pays a bunch of models to stand around behind him looking disinterested.
Okay. I mean, well,
look, if it's working for him, I understand why he's doing it. I just don't like it and consequently feel the way I feel about it.
I mean, I don't really dislike that in theory. I would have to see the videos before I decide whether I dislike them or not.
Fair enough. All right. Also, as far as fight announcements go, the UFC has, I don't think they've made it official yet, but they've announced that they're looking at making Alexander Volkov versus Curtis Blaydes the main event for an upcoming fight night in Saskatoon. Just marking that off the old bingo card, I guess, for Canadian cities. Not a bad fight. You know, it's a relevant heavyweight fight. If Volkov wins, he jumps towards the title picture. If Blaydes wins, he kind of further cements that he's the number one contender if the division was functioning normally, but it's not. The fight that was announced that I'm the most excited about potentially, so I can't wait for it to fall apart for one reason or another. Marlon Moraes and Peter Yan is being targeted as the main event for the UFC's debut in the country of Kazakhstan later this year. And, yeah, hook that to my veins. Again, Yan should be fighting for the belt, I believe. But those two maniacs, there's going to be violence. And depending on where Yan's from in Siberia, he might be geographically close to Kazakhstan, and they might be able to leverage some of that for, you know, drawing a local audience. Again, it's a good fight. I like Yan and Moraes, and the winner is unquestionably the number one contender. There is no debate on that topic. Whoever wins this should fight for the belt next, barring injury. That's it. Anything else, they should be fighting for the belt. You got anything on that one, Jeff? Yan and Moraes? Come on, you got to love that fight.
I think I'm upset.
All right.
It should be for either one of those guys should be fighting for the title.
I do agree with that.
Yan should be fighting for the title. Excuse me. Should be Peter Yan. Sorry. Or is it Piotr?
I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, actually.
It should be Jan fighting Cejudo, basically. It should be Jan.
Yeah, he would. I think Jan's going to become champion.
No wonder no wonder Cejudo doesn't want to fight a guy like that, right? So I take issue with that. I take issue with him fighting Aldo and not Jan, who I believe after his last win, I was like, this guy should be fighting for the title.
I mean, I want to give him all the titles in the world just because he head kicked Uriah Faber into unconsciousness, but my personal biases aside.
Well, of the people who should be fighting for the title at bantamweight right now, he is one of them.
Yeah. And again, I agree with you. I think he should be fighting for the belt. If it's not him, it should be Aljamain Sterling. So, again, it's I would rather Jan were fighting for the belt, but taken in a vacuum to the extent that it exists in that, Jan and Moraes is going to be a barn burner. Okay. I think that's all the news that I had written down. Do you have anything?
Yeah, so UFC Fight Night in Austin, Texas, my old stomping grounds at the Frank Irwin Center, July. So hopefully the coronavirus will have worked itself out by that point, and the Austinites can enjoy themselves a good night of UFC fights.
So who do you think main events that?
I'm not sure. Blaydes Volkov is a decent. I think it's at least a decent heavyweight fight on paper. So that Tony Ferguson Khabib press conference.
What a car crash.
Yeah. I think it cements my view that Ferguson is going to destroy Khabib. And he's already got Khabib angry, which Conor was not able to do.
Oh, Conor made him angry.
Well, not like this.
Look, Conor making him angry just only manifested itself in the fight. I'm a little bit worried that Tony's even going to make it to this fight.
Tony is going to make it to this fight. This fight is going to happen, and Tony's going to win.
If this fight happens, and Lord knows I want it to.
Well, it's going to happen, and Tony's going to win this fight. And I'm shooting my shot with this one right now.
I still don't know. I still don't know how that fight's going to go. I can see how both. I can see.
Tony's going to make Khabib pay for all the shots he does not block.
I can very easily see how both men win this. That's kind of the crazy thing about it.
I'm committed to the idea of Tony winning this fight, and I'm sticking with that all the way up until this fight.
And I think that's reasonable. I've been struggling with this fight to put into real words, like my reservations around each man, why I struggle to pick each of them.
It's tough because this fight has been scheduled 5 times. It's been canceled several times already.
Every time it's been scheduled.
Some catastrophe has happened. But I believe it. This fight has to happen. We have to see this fight. This is one of the most, to me, this is more important than McGregor, Khabib. This is one of the greatest lightweight fights of all time. And it will be. And it will be greater by Ferguson winning.
On paper, this is probably the best lightweight fight ever. Now watch it be a stinker in practice. You know what? No. That's the true punishment for all of us really wanting to see this fight. Somehow, inexplicably, it will actually happen. And I don't know why, but for some reason, a fight between those two will suck.
I don't see it happening.
I don't see it either.
Because they don't fight that way.
Hey, I don't know how. I don't know how that would happen. I really don't. But if I'm going to pick the craziest Because that is the craziest possible outcome to this fight. It's been made and canceled and made and canceled and built up, and we're all foaming at the mouth to see it. That includes me. I want this fight. And two guys who have had maybe in their entire UFC runs, I think they've each had maybe one dud.
Okay.
And somehow, when those two get in the cage together, the result is a terrible fight.
Well, let me give you an example. The fight where I did not score the fight for Khabib against Gleison Tebow, I didn't even think that fight, I mean, it wasn't a great fight, but I don't even think that fight was a dud. Like, I thought, Tebow's doing it. Okay.
Let me think. When it comes to Khabib, I say maybe one apiece because I'm going in the... That's me going off the top of my head.
I don't know if I've ever seen a Khabib fight I thought was bad, personally.
No, let me... again, I'm fairly certain... I'm just going to double check because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm going off the assumption that everybody has one somewhere in there. And the man's had 28 fights. So
Right.
Belarus, not a dud. Tebow fight, I agree with you, not a dud. Tavares, not a dud. I might say the Trujillo fight, but that set, the record for most takedowns in a 3-round fight. So you can argue that one. The Pat Healy fight, maybe that's the closest we've come. Yeah, I think the Healy fight is probably the closest he's come. And Tony has, the whopping one. Like, he had one fight that was just kind of a dud. So, but somehow, between those two of them, with all this buildup, with all this skill, with all the anticipation, watch that fight just stink up the joint worse than anything else. Just as the ultimate screw you to all the fans.
I don't see it happening.
I don't expect it to. And I don't know why that would be the case either. I've said that out loud, that, if there's going to be a big screw you, it's not going to be it falling through. It's going to be the fight sucking.
I'm almost less surprised about what happened last night because Yoel Romero has a low fight IQ and he's a blithering idiot.
Romero has had odd fights and odd performances.
He has the IQ of a gorilla, and he takes rounds off. So the fact that he would just stand in front of a guy flat on his feet for 2 minutes and wave his hands around like he's doing hand katas was not as surprising to me. I would be more than surprised for some catastrophe for that fight to work.
I would be shocked. Again, I would be absolutely shocked if that's what happens. Because I don't know how or why it would.
Okay.
But I only say it because I know that there's always a way for everything you want in this world to turn to ash.
Well, I'm acting right now under the belief that this fight is real and this fight will happen. We will see this fight. It will be spectacular, and Ferguson is going to win. Believe it, know it, get used to it. Ferguson is beating Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Nope, wait, I have a worse scenario. I genuinely have a worse scenario.
No more. Please.
Okay, we get to the night of the fight. The fight is still on. Both men actually get into the cage. Bruce Buffer makes the announcements. The referee gives them their final instructions. We get the fight to actually start. And then Tony Ferguson tries to kick off the cage and blows out his knee in 2 seconds.
Well, thank you, Robert.
I can't help it. I think of worst-case scenarios.
At least there would be some activity in a cage in that scenario.
Possibly. Yeah, again,
I feel like if someone got hurt, they would kind of like, if it was either one of those guys, they would still continue fighting at least for.
Depends on how bad it is.
I mean, I know you hate Uriah Faber, but I mean, he fought Mike Brown for the rest of the fight with 2 broken hands.
A broken hand is very different than a blown out knee.
Okay. Two broken hands.
Still, you can move. You can still move.
Fight.
You still have weapons available.
Yeah, I guess. You're not going to give Faber any credit at all, ever.
Look, I give him credit for persevering through those broken hands. That's a hell of a thing to do. I wouldn't have done that.
I feel like in this scenario, what if in that scenario, I feel like the guys would try to attempt to.
Or okay, fight. Tony kicks off the cage, blows out his knee, stumbles, falls down. The referee has to make him stand back up, and he can't stand back up, and we're done.
I don't think that I will be more up for right now. I'm going to be more optimistic, and I believe the fight will happen. And I'm making let my prediction be known now. Tony Ferguson is going to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Again, he might. I still don't know which way I'm going on that fight. I've gone back and forth.
Tony is gonna. Haven't you been listening? Tony is gonna ankle pick Khabib.
He is absolutely not going to ankle pick Khabib.
Khabib is beating up high schoolers.
He took up. Okay, for those who don't know that story, he didn't beat anybody up. Daniel Cormier brought the high school wrestling team that he coaches to American Kickboxing Academy to do some just wrestling drills with some of the guys there. And the guy in Khabib's weight class, they engaged. The video's online. They engaged in a wrestling match. That's all there. There's nothing untoward. There's nothing unfair. There's nothing dirty. They just wrestled a little bit.
Okay. And he eats tiramisu. He was eating tiramisu the weekend they were supposed to fight, and he
that's not true.
And he wasn't. He messed up his weight cut. He wasn't eating.
That is true. Look, he messed up his weight cut. That's very true. He wasn't eating tiramisu.
There's a photo of him eating tiramisu.
There's a photo of tiramisu at the table he's sitting at. That's not the same thing. He was not eating it.
And you prove he didn't eat it.
No, everyone has said he wasn't eating it.
Okay, why wouldn't they say that?
So how paranoid are you going to be about this? I mean, look, again, I want the fight to happen. I hope it does.
I am so paranoid. I want someone in the camp making sure he's not eating tiramisu at all times. Quite frankly, I want them wrapped in bubble wrap before the fight happens. I want Tony to stop wearing sunglasses indoors.
Boy, that'd be nice.
Exactly.
I really wish I had a good idea about how that fight was going to go, but I just don't.
I have an idea, and I know.
I can see how Tony wins. I really can. I can see how Khabib wins. And I don't know which of those scenarios I find more likely. Here's, I think, what kind of makes me hesitate whenever I go to pick Tony. He is content to lose rounds in the service of a greater fight game plan. And that's okay. Again, it's worked for him. But if you look at, say, the Kevin Lee fight, he took a lot of damage from Kevin Lee. In roughly that same position, Khabib deals more damage than Lee does.
Khabib takes a lot of damage just standing up.
No.
Yes. He gets hit a lot.
No, he really doesn't. That's the scary thing.
He got hit by Michael Johnson.
He got hit once.
That's more than enough. That's more than enough than Tony is going to need.
Tony's not the same kind of power puncher that some of the other guys that have hit.
He has power.
Hang on. I didn't say he doesn't have power. I said he's not the same power puncher.
He's a savage. He's a savage inside that octagon, Robert.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, I can see how Tony wins. I really can. The reason I hesitate in picking Khabib is because I could see Tony surviving the first round or two, getting smashed in, but still persevering, and either cutting him up or catching something late. I can see both guys winning. I really can. And that's one of the reasons I can't seem to land on where I want to go.
I think a lot of people are counting Tony out, personally.
The only people who are counting Tony out of this fight are morons. Even if I go with Khabib at the end of the day. Not saying I am, but even if I do. Pretending that Tony Ferguson...
You're going to pick Khabib.
I don't know.
Fine.
I don't know. I really don't. If I thought I was leaning Khabib, I'd say that. I don't know. Here's the craziest thing.
He's going to systematically wreck Khabib and show Khabib. Khabib he's always had flaws in his game.
Yeah, neither of these guys are anything close.
Khabib has flaws he can exploit, and he's never fought anyone who's really exploited his flaws like Tony is capable of and will be able to. That is a problem. And
Tony is way too lackadaisical about giving up bad positions and bad spots. That's one of the things that makes it such a great fight, because both men have I wouldn't say glaring flaws, but there are very clear avenues of victory for both men relative to each other.
Sure. Tony's still going to win.
He might. I would not be surprised if he does.
I'm committed to this narrative, and I am committed to the narrative the fight will happen somehow. Even if the coronavirus takes over New York, the fight will still happen.
Is that fight in New York?
It's in Brooklyn, isn't it? I thought it was.
You might be right. Hang on. Yeah, it's in Brooklyn. Okay, so the city of New York goes into martial law a week out. And we just lose the event.
That'll make it even easier for the fight. They could have an empty arena fight.
The UFC would never let those two guys fight for free like that. Never.
They moved Jones versus
yeah.
The fight they moved at the last minute.
The Jones Gustafsson rematch.
Okay. That was moved at the very last minute to a different state or just a different city?
Different state. They went from Vegas to California.
Okay, so I feel like if worse came to worse, they could probably figure something out, right?
They would certainly try.
Because, let's see, 248 happened last night. 249 is supposed to happen April 18th. So is that 6 weeks or 5 weeks? Are we 6 weeks out or 5 weeks?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
23 plus 18.
I think we're call it 6.
Yeah, 6 weeks. We're 6 weeks. So we're not even at 1 month, right?
Hey, again, if this fight falls through again based on the pattern that every other fight has fallen through, we're going to get closer to the fight happening than the previous one.
Okay.
The last one fell apart 7 days out. So it'll be fight week before something happens.
I just feel like if the coronavirus thing gets more serious, I feel like right now they have time to figure it out, hopefully. If it's coronavirus related. I mean, I hope not, but I feel like, I don't know. I believe it, Robert. I believe the fight will happen. Don't crush my dreams.
Look, I can't crush your dreams. Only reality can do that.
Okay.
So, I want the fight to happen.
The reality is this fight will happen. It's real. It's really happening this time. And Tony Ferguson won't win. That's the reality. That's reality, Robert. How do you like that? for
I'm going to, if Khabib wins, I'm going to laugh. I'm just saying that.
You're going to laugh at me?
Probably.
Why?
Just generally. Some of that will depend on how he wins.
So then pick Khabib, because I feel like Khabib is your guy, and I feel like you believe he's going to win.
If I thought he was going to win, I'd say I thought he was going to win.
Okay.
I don't know who's going to win that fight.
Okay.
I had no problem picking Khabib against Poirier. I would have no problem picking Khabib against Conor in a rematch. I would pick Khabib over Justin Gaethje.
Poirier had his moments in that fight, as I recall.
He had one moment.
Okay.
There was one shifting right hand that was able to make contact. That's about all he got.
He did better than Conor, I think.
No.
Who acts like he won just because he won a round against Khabib. He somehow won the fight.
He did not win the fight at all, but he is the only person in the UFC to have taken a round from Khabib. Officially. Officially.
Okay.
Because officially, Khabib won that fight 30-27. For the record, I don't agree with. But if we're talking officially, yeah, Conor's the only one to do it. So anyway, hopefully that fight does happen. I really want it to.
Yeah, it's going to. It's destiny. Run from it, dread it. Destiny comes all the same.
You're not going to like Destiny as it relates to this fight, because if we're going by current trends, Destiny is for this fight to never happen.
The Destiny is that it will happen ultimately.
That's you assuming Destiny. That's not evidence. That's not evidence based.
I know it in my bones, Mr. Winfrey.
Your bones don't actually have feeling or brain matter. They can't know anything.
I can feel it. I can feel the energy emanating from the cosmos.
You can want that fight. I want that fight. But I'm also not going to pretend that...
Stars.
You read it in the stars.
Correct.
You live in Los Angeles. You can't see the stars.
I read it in the chicken bones.
I don't believe you.
I sacrificed the chicken.
No, you didn't.
It said
you have never killed a live chicken. I can only say that with confidence because I have.
My point is, the fight is going to become a reality.
I really hope so. I really do.
Good. I don't hope. I know. I know it. This is truth.
You have no evidence to support your claim.
Well,
but that's all right.
Well, as long as Khabib is not eating tiramisu during camp, it should be okay.
Look, if Khabib keeps his weight under control and Tony stops wearing sunglasses inside.
Well, which he hasn't.
I know.
But maybe his eyes are adjusting, and he's learned how to see better while wearing sunglasses inside.
If that were true, it would actually be a bad thing when he has to fight without them. Again, both guys have screwed up royally trying to make this fight happen. Hopefully it does. Because it's the best fight you can make in all of MMA. And has been for 3 years.
It's going to happen this time.
I really hope you're right. I really do.
You don't have to hope.
I do.
And just think, 6 weeks from now, we're going to be recapping the greatest MMA fight in the history of history.
I have serious doubts it will rise to that level.
After Tony Ferguson beats Khabib and wins the title, and takes it back where it rightfully belongs.
Nope, wait. I have another one. They fight. Tony wins and immediately fails a drug test.
I don't know why you would go there.
Because Tony is a crazy person.
All right.
Have you ever listened to that man talk? He sounds like a 5-year-old.
I think he's just the dude. I mean, look, all fighters are wired a little weird.
Hey, and it's working for him. He is right there at the top of the division, man. He is that.
He's a
But
unique individual. I think people are making too much of it.
But he sounds like a 5-year-old half the time when he talks.
I mean, Khabib doesn't sound that much better.
Khabib struggles with the language still a little bit.
Right.
Okay, allow me to quote the great Tony Ferguson.
More than a little.
Allow me to quote the great Tony Ferguson for you.
Go ahead.
I'm back in the rat race, man, but I'm not a rat. I'm a turtle. I'm a ninja turtle. Which one do you like? I like Michelangelo. He sounds like a goddamn kindergartner sometimes with his train of thought. I don't care because he wrecks people in the cage.
I don't really, honestly, I think that sounds kind of cool.
Again, he sounds like a first grader.
I mean, what do you have against Ninja Turtles?
Nothing. I love the Turtles. I can also string together a coherent sentence.
All right.
And follow a single train of logic without it bouncing all over the place.
That was, I mean...
He started with, I'm back fighting in the rat race, and ended in the same sentence with, what's your favorite Ninja Turtle? Oh, by the way, here's mine.
It would have been more coherent if he said, I'm a ninja rat like Splinter. Would that have been better?
It would have been better if he didn't dovetail into 90s cartoons in the first place.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles debuted in the 80s, Robert. The comic and the cartoon.
Okay, the cartoon was what, 89?
88, I believe.
Because I knew the comic was more in the 80s. Look, I grew up with the Ninja Turtles. I really I enjoyed them. I still enjoy a lot of theirs.
Yeah, it was 87 actually.
Okay.
The miniseries was 87, and then I think the episodic debuted 88. So there you go.
Okay.
Yep.
So very late 80s. Okay.
I think you're exaggerating. You're being hypersensitive.
Look, those two are both fundamentally disturbed people, and they're going to try to beat the crap out of each other, and I really hope they get to.
I have all confidence.
Again, I want it to. I really do. I've wanted that fight for, years. But I've wanted a lot of things for years, and most of them I don't have. So I'm kind of used to that. Okay. I think that's it. Let me check Twitter real fast. I don't really want to touch on Brian Ortega last night.
Oh yeah, that was all right. You don't want to talk about that.
I mean, for those of you who don't know, very briefly, he found the guy who was doing some of the translation for the Korean Zombie, and because he didn't like something that was said, slapped him. Taking out your frustrations on a translator is unbelievably...
Wait, why was he upset with the translator?
I don't know. Either because he just didn't like what the Korean Zombie said to begin with, or didn't like the way it was translated. I don't know. I know that's what he took issue with. So, I have no real time for people who... look, a translator's just doing their job, man. You shouldn't get upset about them unless they have royally botched the translation. And I don't think that was his beef here. All right, so moving on. Let's get into plugs then. We've rambled about enough for entirely too long. If I were the editing kind, I would cut this down by at least half, but I'm not, so that's kind of where we are. Okay, so Jeff, you've been gone for a couple of weeks. What would you like to plug?
Okay, so Pixar's Onward, My Hero Academia, Heroes Rising for reviews. Got some wrestling interviews I'll be having over the next week on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Check it out on YouTube and Apple's podcast. So I believe it's going to be Gail Kim and Alex Hammerstone. So if you would check those out once they come up the next several days, I would appreciate it.
All right, as for myself, as mentioned, you can find my full report for UFC 248 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. You can find Mark Radulich and I doing alternate watch-along commentary for the main card for that event. And you can ascribe at least part of my terrible coverage to me doing that at the same time. Mark and I will be reviewing Onward on Damn You Hollywood this Tuesday. You can listen to our review of The Invisible Man from Thursday, which we had a decent enough time talking about. And, this Friday, I will be pinch hitting to cover SmackDown in the in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. So, if you want to see how dry I can make a very dry show already, well, go ahead and let's see how badly I can botch that. I think that's everything that I have coming up. So yeah, we'll be back next week to review UFC on ESPN Plus 28, and we will be previewing UFC on ESPN Plus 29 from London when Tyron Woodley will fight Leon Edwards. So you can tune in for us talking about that. We'll be basically the only ones. Because if two great fighters that no one likes to watch have a fight, does it really happen? Those questions and other philosophical musings on the nature of combat sports will take place next week. Until then, thank you all again. Appreciate you guys. Stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.